Hey, Yubi.
Hey, how are y'all
How
doing?
you doing?
I'm doing all right. How about you?
Smidge under the weather at the moment. Got a bit of a cold, but otherwise all right.
Uh,
Hello.
hey,
How's it going?
pretty good. How about you lot?
Good. We're on a company trip to Arizona right now, so taking in the sun,
Nice.
but currently sequestered in a windowless ballroom. But
Yep.
that's okay. Patrick, long time no see.
Hey, Patrick.
Hello, how's it going? All good?
Can't complain.
All right, let's just wait for Alex and then we should be complete. Let's just get started already. All right, welcome to the GraphQL.js working group. By being here, we all agree to the specification membership agreement, the participation guidelines, the contribution guide, and the code of conduct. If you haven't read those, they are linked in the agenda. Um, let's all introduce ourselves in order of the table in the agenda. So, hey, I'm Yofi.
Hi, folks. Hi, folks. I'm Benji.
I don't actually know who's
I think Alex is next, right? Or maybe it's us.
Yeah, but
is it.
both of you.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'm Gerald.
I'm Jeff.
Hi, I'm Jakob. I just sent a pull request.
I'm Patrick.
Awesome. The notes, I'll link the note-taking doc in the chat. Feel free to all participate. Helps a lot for people who can't make it. So we have 3 talking points currently on the agenda, and all 3 speakers are here. I've added them to the agenda. We don't have any ready for review topics, and no action items that have progressed. So um, let's kick it off with Alex's nullability update.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, first of all, great to meet you. Thank you for doing the work on the knowability thing. Um, I guess I'm trying to just sort of take stock of where we're at. Um, so I think let's see. What's left to do? Like, what are the action items that are left? I think you pulled out the um the the directive, right? The directive is going to be separate, or do you want to wait until after the working group to do that?
So currently the directive was merged from Martin. It's on main. It doesn't have a release yet. If it were to release, it would be in a new alpha of V17.
Oh, Martin did the document directive?
I think it's an operation directive. Let me double check for you.
I think that is that the
Experimental disable null propagation, error propagation.
yeah, so I'm talking about the one that enables the semantic nullability syntax.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, I did not extract that from mine.
Oh, okay. Cool. Do you have a feeling about like how difficult that's going to be to generalize?
I currently don't know. Our parsing of schemas is a bit distinct from how we do other things, and we'd have to persist that as metadata on the resulting schema. I'm just not familiar enough with the code there to quickly tell you.
Okay. Given that uh I guess the direction of the proposal might change after the general working group, do you want to delay implementing that until after? Okay. Okay. Cool. Yeah, I don't know. You'd know better than me, but my vibe is that that would be that portion of the proposal feels new and difficult. So I don't want to have us do a bunch of work that's gonna get tossed. Okay. The rest of it I think is probably pretty good. So uh do spec I'll finish the spec edits based on what we have, and then yeah, and then we can decide what to do after the general working group. Cool. Yeah, I don't know. Anything else you want to talk about here, Benji?
No, not particularly. I think at the moment we can still, with Martin's change, that's quite nice. We can start experimenting with disabling error propagation. And we already have the semantic non-null directive as well that people are using to experiment. So I think we can generally still experiment with these concepts, even if it's not with the final syntax. So is there anything other than the syntax, is there anything that can't be experimented with? I guess the introspection would be the only part that is left that hasn't been fully solved yet.
I feel like
Especially, go on.
I feel like this often ties back into the feature discovery thing. We might need something where we can have like a experimental part of introspection or something.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea. The concept of excuse me, the concept of introducing like a feature flags that the schema supports has been mooted a few times with the main WG, but we haven't concluded on anything yet. But it would be a nice thing to be able to introduce what capabilities this schema has. And doing so without being just like a concrete version number as well, I think is really important because it allows us to do these kind of experimental features.
Mhm. Okay, cool. Yeah, well, we've got the nullability working group meeting later today, so I'll have a more solid idea of where we're at uh, after that as well. And then, but yeah, I appreciate all the work you've done. And yeah, I think we're in a pretty okay place. I think that's all I wanted to say on that.
All right. Unless anyone has questions, I think we're good to move on to the next topic. Awesome. All right. That's by me. I titled it Releasing GraphQL v17, but it's not meant to be interpreted as release it right now as stable. It's more like what is our roadmap towards it. We have a few things that we initially noted, which is that we lack export maps, which is a JavaScript feature to like do discovery for ESM, CGS, and so on. And we can granularly export certain parts of GraphQL.js. We have the process env thing, which is not standard in non-bundler land. That is still in our GraphQL.js code base that we don't know what exactly we'll do with it. So I think those are two subjects that would highly benefit from having opinions from Apollo and other client implementations that where process might not be default. Then we also have the big int scalar issue. Well, maybe we can skip it because it's not really a breaking change. It's more like a feature. And then whether or not we go from alpha to beta or we'll go to release candidates. I think those are kind of the main points that are up for discussion from my side. Yeah, Benji.
There are a fair few other things that have been coming down the spec pipeline for a little while, many things that are like RFC2. One of them I added to the agenda for today, so the skip and include directives on the subscription route. But there's also a number of other things that I think we should probably also squeeze into v17 that are generally quite straightforward. So for example, adding a validation rule that operation type actually exists, like invalidating if you attempt to do a mutation when your schema doesn't support mutation. Many of these already have pull requests and are already, I think, stage 2. So getting them merged in to v17 would help A, us advance them to get them into the spec properly, RFC3, and B, v17 would be a great time to do that because some of them have, well, I mean, technically are breaking changes. I mean, like the case of an operation not existing would now mean that if anyone had a document that was mutation, that document would now be invalid, but also it would never have ran anyway. So it's weirdly breaking in that it's not, any legit code probably would have been failing anyway, just in a different position. There was also implementations may not deprecate a field that the interface itself hasn't deprecated. And also potentially a tweak to the default value coercion rules, which maybe I think Yakov could speak more to. I know that's one that I think Lee took on 2 or 3 years back, and it never quite got merged. And I think Yakov has brought it up to date with the latest. Yakov, I'll hand over to you on that. You're still
Yakov.
muted.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I think with Yovi's help, we got all that work in. I noticed lurking, actually, I think it was the nullability working group. I think you listed that as like a breaking change that might actually be part of like a GraphQL version 2. Like you had a long list of things that you were talking about what might go, what that might consist of, a GraphQL version 2. And I think that was on the list, which surprised me. And I'm happy to hear that you'd actually like that get into main because I think it already has been merged into main. So I think we're up to date on at least that one. That's Lee's work from a few years back that is now in main and therefore in the latest v17 alpha.
Yeah, and if you want to verify that, we wrote, well, the upgrade guide can definitely use some eyes, but we'll add it under API documentation. But that kind of describes the default value changes.
That's really good. Okay, so I should add the corresponding spec pull request to be advanced to RFC3 then. Could one of you please look over the spec change? I need to bring it up to date probably. But if you could look over the spec changes and see whether that aligns with what you've currently got implemented, that'd be really helpful.
Yeah, I can try to take a look before the next meeting.
Thanks, Jakob. Appreciate that.
Jeff also raised his hand.
Oh yeah, I was just going to mention on the process M stuff. So Lens right now is experimenting. We're working on Apollo Client V4. He's experimenting with export conditions for development and production environments to kind of see if that will help us solve. Because we've used global list.__dev for most of V3. So that's something we can kind of keep in touch on and see how that goes. He's still working through it and seeing if it's going to work for us or not. Yeah, just wanted to throw out there. There's a possibility there that maybe something along those lines might be able to help us.
Awesome. That sounds good. If y'all complete that, feel free to reach out on the issue. That would help a lot.
Yeah, sounds great.
Where are we on the ESM discussion at the moment?
So the latest thing that came up is now with nodes rolling out require ESM more and more, that it might be good to go ESM only, but the counter argument, I don't remember whether I typed that or someone else, was that this might not be stable for the coming half year to a year. So do we want to wait for that, or do we want to defer that?
I think either way, if we don't do it now, then signposting that we will be doing it as part of V18 unless something, catastrophic happens in the node ecosystem. I think that would be a really compelling story. And essentially saying, yeah, we're expecting early next year to launch V18 with full native ESM support or something like that.
Gotcha. Okay. Then the last point of my stuff is API, well, 2 points. Do we go to release candidates, or do we go from alpha to beta, or do we just stick with alpha for a bit? I don't know what our normal trend is.
If you agree that the ones that I raised earlier should be in, then we should get those in before we go to beta. Also, when we go to beta, we should be in a reasonably it should be feature complete at that point. So we should be where we basically want to be, and then it's just a case of testing things. So yeah, I think I would try and land a few of those other pull requests if need be, and then move to beta. That would be my thought.
Yeah. Tag Yakov or myself on any pull requests that fit this criteria, and then we'll definitely take a look.
Okay, awesome. I will take that as an action item.
All right, and then last is API documentation. I think that will be a big effort. I would love for people to read the upgrade guide we already have. It is far from perfect or complete, but just making a feedback cycle would help. That is all I had on this subject.
just to weigh in, I just want to really compliment all the work on the new website. I think it lays a great and the upgrade guide. I think it really lays a great um, foundation for what will be hopefully a documentation that's much easier to keep in sync and to flesh out. I wish I had more time to contribute to that, and I'll try to carve out whatever time I do have, because I think it's like you've mentioned many times, very important. So thank you so much for all the work you've done.
Yeah, I echo Yakov's sentiments.
Thank you for the kind words. I'll hand it off to Benji for include, skip, and subscription routes.
Yeah, so this was me trying to figure out what things need to be done before we go v17 proper. And this one's been open for a little while. I think I originally opened it against v16, so I actually spent some time today trying to bring it up to date with the latest version. So just to catch you up on A, what it is and why, and then B, what the feedback was. So there's this interesting side edge case that you can get in introspection, not in introspection, sorry, in subscriptions, where if you create a subscription document that uses skip and include in the root selection set, then you can give it something like 3 fields and skip 2 of them and include the other one, and it will seem that it is valid. And it's because essentially it in the algorithm in the spec, it just feeds in variable values as empty. So all of the defaults for the if apply when we do field collection. So essentially it's a bit weird, and that shouldn't happen. What then happens is come execution time, we find that there's more than one field or too few fields or whatever, and we raise an error at that point. But really, those things shouldn't have been valid in the first place. So originally, I wrote a small spec change to address this, but what the feedback that Lee gave on it was essentially it was a bit hacky, and he actually wanted the field collection to be extracted from execution because, as you know, validation doesn't factor in variable values at all. So doing field collection, which relies on variable values to know whether the skip and include are used or not, during validation, it is a bit weird. So what I've done in the spec pull request is I've actually pulled out that algorithm, updated it so that it talks in terms of not needing variables, explicitly disallows the skip and include, and that's all fine. But when it comes to the implementation of GraphQL.js, I went with a much simpler approach. I've actually updated that today, and I've made it so that we just explicitly pass a forbid skip and include Boolean into collect fields, and we do that only from the single field subscription rule. We then collect any forbidden directives because there may be more than one, so that we can then raise the relevant validation errors for those. I think it works. It passes the tests and everything. But I don't know whether you felt that there was maybe a cleaner way to do this. To let you in on what I did before, and you can look through the Git history to see it, was what I effectively did is create a new frozen object, null prototype object, and then use that for the variable values. And then I just said, if when we're doing this check, if the variable values is specifically exactly this object, then it must be that we should forbid skip and include. But that seemed a little bit like it was relying too much on JavaScriptisms, and anything that did like not reference comparisons, did deep object comparison or something, it wouldn't work for. So porting to other languages might be more challenging. So I decided to go explicit in the end. But anyway, yeah, feedback on that would be appreciated.
I didn't fully catch whether, like, is this reflected in spec already, or that's also in RFC2?
I think it's RFC maybe 1, maybe 2. Let me just check. I think it's referenced from the pull request. Yeah, it's currently RFC2 status, so it won't become RFC3 until it's basically merged into GraphQL.js. But it's essentially, we've agreed that this is something we want to solve and this is the right kind of solution for it, but maybe not finalize the specific spec text perfectly, like it hasn't had an editorial pass. But yeah, it's a relatively small spec change.
Sounds good to me. I'll try to make time for it over the next days.
Awesome, thank you. I've also added it to the GraphQL working group next Thursday, so week tomorrow, to try and advance it there as well.
One thing I just noticed, just looking through it very quickly, is it looks like the collect fields algorithm now basically returns like a specific error, bit of error information, meaning like, did we encounter like a forbidden directive? I'm not. I think that's we have I think one other case in which where we have sort of an error that could be triggered by collect fields. I think if it's an operation, if it's a subscription operation that where the defer directive is used, and I'm wondering, but we don't do that. We just, I think we just throw an error, if I'm not mistaken. I have to go look through. So that's just looking through it very, very quickly. I'm not even sure I'm right, but I would just, maybe we could align both of those, like one way or the other, or think about that. That's just one thing I noticed.
Yeah, very astute. So you're right. I've effectively returned a list of forbidden directive instances. Now, when you use this in general field collection, you actually don't care, because the rest of the execution algorithm will check for it anyway. So it doesn't matter most of the time. It only matters from that one validation rule where we don't want an error to be thrown. We want to collect all of those nodes together and then add them to effectively the list of invalid parts of the document. So you want to be able to highlight each of those. So we are collecting them as nodes. But in general, if this were to fail, it doesn't actually matter according to the execution algorithm because it checks for it in a different way. And I do also have a slight concern over this, and this is just my obsession with performance. But effectively, when we call this at the moment, we are we are creating an empty array every single time that we're calling collect fields to do this thing that we only need in this one position, and that upsets me. But I was aiming for a clean diff, so that's what I've done for now. But I will certainly take opinions on that.
Thanks for going through those concerns. I mean, if something occurs to me, but if there's a difference between how we handle the two cases because because of some underlying reasoning, then obviously we don't have to align them. It's only it's only a nice to have it, or if it actually aligns with what we're trying to do. So I'll try to take a closer look and weigh in if I actually have any more educated thoughts than these, which I might not. Okay.
Okay, sounds good. The other option, like another approach to this, is actually to mirror what we've done in the spec itself, which is effectively to duplicate the algorithm. So we would build field collection again, but it would be like validation time field collection, and thus wouldn't factor in variables, and it would be the only place that needs to collect these directives, that kind of thing. But it seems like broadly duplication of code without a massive payoff from it. So I'm a bit hesitant to do that.
I hear you.
All right. Does anyone have more talking points or anything they want to mention?
I'm just reviewing the agenda, and you brought up some great points about getting V17 out. I don't know if we explicitly came down on one side. I saw on your list, but I don't know if we or maybe we discussed it really quickly about instance of and how we plan on addressing that. Like, should we come down on a particular side? Would it help to discuss it here?
So Lens from Apollo is working on a similar issue, but on the Apollo side, and he's working through options and will follow up with us for instance of specifically.
Okay. So that wasn't just right. That's the same issue that we were discussing before. Okay, great. Thanks.
Right. If no one has any points, I think we can conclude the meeting and give everyone back half an hour.
Thanks so
Awesome.
much.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a nice
Bye.
day, all. See ya.